impact your work life, you as an individual, and your relationship with yourself. So we delve deeper into those aspects. Yeah. And today, what I want to talk about is something which is a key foundational pillar, if I may call it, keeping your word. So the question is, do you keep your word? I want to touch upon certain basics here. Why are we even talking about this? Keeping your word. What's the significance? Two, what is the, why do I call it foundational pillar? What's the, and we kind of relate it to the impact it has on you. Not keeping the word, what's the impact? Yeah, and keeping the word, what's the impact? And then why would I even want to work on it? Right. So these are some of the things that I want to talk about today. Looking forward to having all of you join in. Do let me know, give me a high, drop in a high in the comments so that I know you are here, because there's no other way for me to figure out that you are here. And as always, please drop in your thoughts, your experiences, your perspectives as we talk about this, as we move along. And if there are any questions that come to your mind, okay, please shoot them here. Yeah. Great. So let's get started. As we talk about keeping your word, let's first understand, what does keeping your word mean. Very, very fundamental, basic. Keeping your word, whatever you say, whatever you the words that you say, anything that you are telling somebody, you commit to somebody, is that a commitment that you're making to yourself or not? Are you doing what you say? Whether it is personal space, whether it is your professional space, whether it is social space, whether it is your relationship with yourself. It's not necessarily about you telling somebody something and then ensuring you do it, but it's also about you telling something to yourself and make it a commitment. Like, so that's about keeping your word. Now, why are we talking about it? Why do I call it fundamental pillar? Why do I call it foundational pillar? And that's because, let's look at the impact it has. If you're not keeping your word, which means अगर आप जो कहते हैं वो नहीं करते हैं, then what's the impact? So, couple of things. I've had leaders who are struggling in workplace relationships, because that's what this whole talk is about. Workplace relations. So when leaders come, they say, oh, I'm struggling in my relation with my boss, I'm struggling in my relation with my colleague, with my subordinate, I'm struggling in my relation, in my personal relations. How many of you are struggling in relationships at your home, personal space, family, friends? So there are people who are doing that. Almost everybody has a struggle in their personal relations. Yes. Now, one of the things there, which was, I would say, common to almost everybody, was um, they were not keeping their word. Yeah. And you want to have amazing relationships, you want to be a world class leader, you want to be somebody who people consider as role model, you want to be somebody who's impacting, influencing, inspiring people, right? You want to have good chemistries, camaraderies with people. But what about keeping your word? What about whatever you say, ensuring that, yes, I'm going to follow that? I say my word carries that value. If I say something, it's going to be done. Hi, Anshuman. Welcome. Thank you for joining in. So, my word carries that value. Now, why is it important? The whole point is, how much of weightage do I give to what I'm uttering from my mouth? Or is it just that I keep making promises, I keep saying things, and then they make no difference? Because then people perceive you as this one person. हाँ ये बोलता है पर कुछ होता नहीं है. अच्छा, oh, you're talking about Aastha. She says a lot of things, but big deal. Don't even bother. May happen, may not happen. So, one, people start to perceive you in that light. Two, what's happening inside is that you also start to not respect yourself. That self-respect goes for a toss. So within ourselves, we are sending a message that, yes, it's okay to not honor my word. It's okay, बोल दिया है, बोलने में कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है. Even if I don't do it, it's fine. But you say it's fine, but somewhere that's how you start to perceive yourself. So when people say you won't do it or you don't keep your word, it's actually coming from where? It's about what you believe about yourself, because then that's what you show or send outside. So when there is a mess here, when you're not keeping your word with yourself, that's where it starts, right? Where does it start with? It starts by you keeping your word with yourself, right? So if I say, what does that mean? So if I say I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. every day because I want to use that morning time, then am I doing that? What am I doing to inculcate that habit, right? If I say today I'm going to spend that 1 hour with my daughter and maybe take her out somewhere, and then I go and say, hey, today I have a lot of work, can we do this tomorrow, or maybe can we do this next week? Well, the child will say it's okay, but then you're leaving the child with a certain feeling. And what does that do to your relationships? Somewhere, then people start to feel that, oh, I'm being taken for granted. He doesn't care, maybe I'm not even as important, right? Maybe this camaraderie, this connection, this bond is not as important. And look into your lives. It's not about beating yourself and saying, oh my god, I'm not doing it, but the whole idea of this conversation is to talk about something very basic, very fundamental, no big complex things, but at a very basic level. If I can start doing this, that's the whole idea. But when will I start doing this? When will I prioritize keeping my word? When I'll see the impact it is having on me, and when I even understand that yes, it is important, it's something I need to look into. So for that, you need to look into your lives, dive deep, look at your relationships in your personal space and relationships at work. What's the quality? And now look at those relations and see, are you keeping your word? I've had leaders forget what they're doing at their workplaces, okay? But I'll tell you, in the coaching sessions, I've had leaders who come and it gets difficult to reach out to them. They do not respond, they take days together to respond. You don't know what's going on. Well, it's not because they have any ill intention, but it's out of habit, it's out of some fear that you have, it's out of maybe just a simple habit. Okay, I'll respond, maybe it's not as important, I'll do it later. But consider, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. If that's what you're doing here, consider that's what you're doing in your personal space also, that's what you're doing with people at your workplace also. And now when you say my relationships are strained, they are difficult, I have this struggle with my spouse, with my parents, with my child, yeah, I have this struggle with my boss, with my colleagues, people invariably coming and relationships take the biggest hit. Yeah, you've got to see how you are treating your word, how important is your word for yourself. Yeah, and start by looking at whether you're keeping your word for yourself. Most of the times when you say today I'm going to take 2 hours of rest, today I don't want to stress myself, I just want to do watch a film, right? Maybe I just want to spend time reflecting, thinking, maybe I want to start meditating, walking is enough important for me, or I'm going to prioritize my health. All of these things, are you really doing it? And how many times then you give excuses, you give reasons, you have justifications for not doing it, for not honoring your word. So every time when you've not done it, oh, I'm sorry, I had to call you, I forgot. Okay, now when you say I forgot, what do you think, how do you leave the other person feeling? How do you leave the other person feeling? You don't have ill intention, but consider, you just send the message, maybe you're not as important for me, right? Because if there's something which is important for you, you will not forget it. You're not going to skip it. You're not going to leave it. We all know that. But if you miss a call, if you don't call me at the time that we decided, that just gives me a message. Maybe this call is not as important. Maybe I'm not as important. and that impacts the relationship even before it begins or while it is on. uh, and it does impact. So sometimes leaders come and say that, 1 month I've had an amazing connect with my boss, with my colleagues, and as soon as that 1 month passes, I see that, somewhere relationship starts to fade, little stress starts to build up. It's not as cool, we don't have good conversations, meaningful conversations anymore. So somewhere we get into that mode of chalta hai, you're taking for granted, and then you stop keeping your word, or you feel it's okay once, twice, thrice not to keep my word. Doesn't matter. Out of 10 times, if I'm not doing it 4 times, how does it matter? And the other person understands, we have a good connection. Well, don't make the mistake of taking people and things for granted. That's the biggest casualty in any relationship where there is a strain or a stress. Okay. Keeping your word is not only foundational, fundamental, it is must. If you want to become a better version, if you want to be a leader, a world class leader, you want to be somebody who's the go to person, not just for your people at your work but even people at your home. If you want them to respect you, if you want them to love you, if you want them to really look up to you as, wow, इनको बोल दिया मतलब done, or he's my go to person because he keeps his word. And keeping your word doesn't mean that you do it at the cost of your mental or physical health. मेरी इच्छा नहीं है, मेरा मन नहीं है, I'm not up for it, and yet I am like, no, 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 I have to do it, I can't say a no. Don't mistake it with can't say no. No, the whole thing is whatever you say is what it is. So if you are not up for something today and you say, hey, I don't think I can do it today, but maybe next week, Monday, 10 a.m., I'm available. Would that be a good time? Then for the other person, it's a clear message. And that's where people don't get offended. They feel, wow, if Astha is saying not possible today, but next Monday, 10 a.m., it means it's going to happen at 10 a.m. Because they've had an experience that I keep my word. And if I'm saying something is not possible today, it's really not possible. You've got to build that seriousness about yourself because that's what's going to reflect outside. If you take yourself for granted, if you take yourself casually, then that's the vibe that goes out, and then that's how people treat you, right? And this is not just theoretically something that conceptually something that you need to add to your box, but it's something I'm telling you from experience. I've seen that shift happening the moment, forget what you're doing with other people, but the moment you're taking yourself for granted, and the moment you get serious and very very assertive and clear about what works for me, what doesn't work, like you put your foot down. I've seen the shift happen in my way of being, and hence in how other people treat me, right? So in you keeping your word to yourself, so when I say that I am standing up for myself and my commitment is that I am my priority and I'm going to bring that love and compassion for myself. So everything that I'm doing in my life, personally, professionally, the decision comes from the context of my commitment to myself, right? Now when I'm keeping that word to myself, nobody outside knows this context of mine, right? But when I'm keeping my word, when I say no, I'm rejecting this, or I'm saying a no to this because this is not in sync with my commitment to myself, then I'm honoring my word. The unsaid word or the said word, whatever, what I've said to myself, I'm honoring that word, and hence I'm honoring myself. When I honor myself, it leads to increased self-esteem, self-confidence, increased self-respect. That's what I send out, and that's what people see. And then that's when people say, wow, Astha means no nonsense. She keeps her word. If she said something, it's going to happen, right? You can't mess with her. Doesn't mean I'm not showering people with love and happiness. That's all there. But you can do that and yet be assertive and stand rock solid. And that's somewhere where people then get inspired, because That's what everybody wants to be. You want to have the balance of both these things, right? And that's where keeping your word comes in handy. It's a muscle that needs to be built. If you're not keeping your word, you won't realize it has far reaching effects. And you can't keep your word, let me tell you. You can't keep your word with people outside unless you learn to keep your word with yourself. It starts, anything starts with yourself. So start by building that muscle, that if I say something or if I commit something to myself, it's like it's a commitment, then I'm not going to back off. So don't overwhelm yourself with 10 things, but you say, I'm just going to do this one thing today. I promise I'm going to do that for myself. And then you do it. Keep that word. And that's how you slowly send the message to your brain that yes, this is what it is. You stop making a mess, you stop having those 10 things and not doing it, and then you're like, oh my god, I said but I didn't do it. And same way, then that's how you start treating people outside, and then in turn, that's what you command from people, right? It's all interlinked, right? But I would say more than फिर क्या होगा, कैसे होगा, एक्सपीरियंस कैसा होगा, उससे क्या बदल जाएगा, more than understanding that at the level of knowledge, it's beneficial, it's more important to practice this, to try this out, start this. And when I say start this, keep your word for next 10 days and see what happens, next 20 days and see what happens, 30 days. You're not going to be the same person, I promise you. Your relationships are not going to be the same. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Whether it's your personal space, professional space, first step, reflect. Sit down, spend some time, relationships that are messed up, see what you're doing there, keeping with respect to keeping your word. There are a lot of other factors. Today we're talking about, do you keep your word? And within that, are you keeping your word? Is it that people have to follow up with you again and again? Is it that they have to remind you, hey, you said this, you said you'll do this, but you haven't done that? Maybe you're doing that at your workplace. And no matter how well you do your job, how amazing you are at that, if you're not keeping your word, you're taking people for granted, which is coming from where? You're taking yourself for granted. Bol rahe ho, nahi kar rahe ho, taking yourself for granted. If that's what is happening, it's a mess. Hi, Kshitij. Yeah. So reflect on that. Number one, if you see, yes, I'm not keeping my word, then start by keeping your word with yourself, which means whatever you're saying to yourself, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm not going to do. I'm going to spend time with this, I'm going to have these many meetings, I'm going to make these many calls, spend time with my parents or spouse or children. Anything that you do, start, be aware. Be aware. I've committed this today, I've got to make it happen. Keep your word. When you do that consistently for a week, for 10 days, for 15 days, 20 days, you see how the chemistry starts to shift. Yep. So, so think about this, reflect on this. If it makes sense, then drop in a message. Let me know. Let me know what opened up for you and what is it that you're going to do differently. And also keep me posted on what is opening up for you. So, interestingly, it's not going to be a standard journey and outcome. Oh, I'm keeping my word. तो सबके लिए ऐसा होगा नहीं. There'll be things, different things that will open up for you. We'll all have our own perspectives from our experiences. Share that. Come back to me. And if there's anywhere that you feel stuck, feel free to reach out. Okay. Message me. I'll be happy to hear you out and support you in your journey, whether it is relationships that are strained in your professional space, with your boss, with your colleague, with anybody, at any stakeholder at your workplace, right? But this is foundational. This, if you want to, if you're striving to become a better leader, a better human being, a better version of who you are, this is definitely non-negotiable. It's a foundational pillar. Yeah. Great. I hope this was meaningful. Thank you for being here. I see some of you are here live. Thank you for staying on. Let me know what's your biggest takeaway from today's session. Did this resonate with you? Did this make sense? What did you see for yourself? So let me know. And Do join in every Sunday, 8:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. That's where we meet live and we talk about some aspect of your relationship with yourself or your workplace relationships. We delve a little deeper into that, right? So the idea is action, action, action. Without action, nothing changes. So get on with keeping your word. Reflect, see the impact of not keeping the word, make a choice. What do you want to do? So when you're making a choice, which means you're making a commitment to yourself, right? And now keep your word. Honor your word and honor yourself, right? Hope this made sense. Those of you who were not live, who could not join live, please make sure you watch this, the recorded version. But this is fundamental. I've seen n number of leaders missing out on keeping their word. This is so fundamental. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have to watch this and let me know what is it that you are doing in this area. Great. Sending out lots of love, lots of happiness. Thank you, Anshuman, for being here. And I'm glad it resonated with you. Thank you. Hope this made sense for all of you. Take care. See you next week, next Sunday, 8:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Till then, have a great, great week ahead. Be in action and keep doing the work on yourself. Bye bye.